Greetings, Wonders.
Greetings, Maggie.
Would you please go to whom, to where, and to when you are directed? Would you please locate your facilitator, Maggie McGuffin Gadet, on June 3rd, 2006?
Yes, we have you.
We are gathered here at 8361 11th Line, R number 2, Thornton, Ontario, to do a general session for the Direction of Humanity workshop group entitled Observing Movement. Would you please begin?
Take a look at your human consciousness. Where is it heading to? Is it heading towards expansion or contraction? If you observe carefully, you'll realize that as long as humanity lives in a consciousness of fear, that in effect, no matter what you achieve as a physical representation of yourselves, that your consciousness is really moving towards contraction. You are not truly giving yourselves greater freedom of choice. In fact, as a race, as an existence, you're looking to contract and minimize your choices. More rules, more laws, more limitations, more structure, more definitions, less freedom. In your world, you pride yourselves on perspectives of existence. One is viewed as democracy. One is viewed as socialism. One is viewed as communism. One is viewed as Islamic. One is viewed as fundamentalist. One is viewed as libertarianism. But in truth, if you think about it, all of these perspectives are into perspectives of contraction, aren't they? Because there is less and less desire to go into freedom, to live by the principle or the awareness that you are free. And by free here, we don't mean that you can do anything to harm yourself and others without the resultant of choice leading to another choice. That's always the case. What we're talking about here is a freedom to choose freely. Your world is intent on limiting that. Okay. Everybody's falling asleep. So let's wake you up. Where are you heading? Towards expansion or contraction? Or somewhere in between?
Expansion.
Why? Why do you see your existence moving towards expansion?
Because I am choosing more freely. Maybe not all the time, but I have my moments. I'm consciously making an effort to do that.
So, by choosing freely, you're giving yourself expansion.
Yes.
And when you don't choose freely, as you said, in certain moments you do, certain moments you don't.
Right.
In those moments when you don't, what happens to your movement in life? Is it expanding or contracting?
Well, it's certainly slowing down. And it depends how long I stay there.
Yes. So it contracts immediately, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to get it back into expansion, choose freely.
Right.
So how do you get it to expansion when you're in the middle of that contraction?
I have an awareness. I have an awareness of what I'm doing, and I look at it consciously and say, do I want to be here? And I don't.
Right.
So then I make another choice to move out of that.
So you choose freely.
Yes.
So really, to choose freely, you have to choose freely.
Right. Uh-huh.
There is no other way, is there?
No.
So there is no other methodology, no other technique. There is no other perspective of fear that will lead you to choosing freely. To choose freely, you must choose freely.
Yes, that's true. Fear won't make you do it.
And for the benefit of everyone listening to this recording, that's what you must do as well. Quit trying to come up with ways to do it and just choose freely. Because really, that's what you do, isn't it? You said yourself, you realize, you come to an awareness within yourself. True?
Mm-hmm.
then you look at it and say, do I want it? Do I not?
Right.
The answer is no. Okay, then you choose differently. True?
True.
So, isn't that all about choosing freely? Do I want it? Do I not? You choose an answer freely, then you choose a resultant freely. One choice leads to another choice, which leads to another choice.
Yes.
Good for you.
Wonders, is there not an element of fear of contraction in that?
In her, yes. In the concept, no. You see, when she says to herself, "Is this what I want?"
Yeah.
There is still a small, minute element of fear within her. But we assure you, to her credit, this fear is almost virtually eliminated. She's now just simply looking at it and saying, do I want it? Do I not? She could have fear. She knows she could. True?
True. Yeah.
And you know what it does for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it makes you feel good, doesn't it?
Sometimes.
But other times you just say, no, this isn't for me. It's like a good orgasm. Sometimes it makes you feel good, and sometimes it doesn't do a thing for you. True?
Mm-hmm.
So, more than one person answered that one. Interesting. But the point is that you can choose it any way you want. Do you see? Do you have fear?
Oh yeah.
So why do you stay in the consciousness of fear?
You know, I'm realizing in this workshop that I operate that way. But there are moments when I do choose freely and have chosen freely. But as I was listening just a few moments ago, I said, when I've chosen and ended up in a position where I realize I'm contracting, it's the fear of contracting that's caused me to choose freely.
Okay.
So it's still a fear.
Is that the fear of contracting that caused you to choose freely?
It's a realization that I am contracting because I do want to expand.
Okay, so let's put it down to the brass tacks here. Let's not kind of soften it up a little. We don't want you to soften it up too much. Soft things don't actually work too well. So let's look at it from the real hard perspective.
Okay, I got a visual now.
Far be it for us to limit your visualizations. But see it from that perspective. When you think to yourself that it's your fear of contraction that's moving you to choose freely, you said it yourself. There's a real desire within you to expand, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
Now, is that desire based on a fear of contraction or just a desire to expand?
No, it's just a desire to expand.
So really, who's having the conversation about it's the fear of contraction that's causing you to expand? You or your mind?
My mind.
And if it's your mind, what does your mind operate out of?
It operates out of fear.
So could it be said then that the humanity as a whole is operating out of its mind so completely, chuckle, that it is operating out of a consciousness of fear? Whereas if it chose to operate from itself, it would choose to operate from a consciousness of free choice.
Yeah, that certainly would be accurate. So we want to get out of our minds.
Yes. And then that way you can always go around and say to your friend, look at me, I'm out of my mind.
Yep.
And then it wouldn't be so hard or soft, would it?
That's true.
It would be what it is.
That's right.
Do you see? The key here is to understand that humanity as a whole prides itself on its mind so completely because that is what has, to humanity's perspective, moved it away from a race fraught with limitations of term it, not being able to do a great deal, not being able to create, not being able to manufacture, not being able to use. In other words, humanity sees itself as its mind having moved it from Neanderthal to Homo sapiens, from existing as a hunted animal to existing as an animal who hunts. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
So the humanity prides itself on its mind. And as long as it prides itself on its mind and says this is why we've moved away from the dark ages into the technological age, then, dear friends, that's what humanity will continue to operate from. It will see, it will have a consciousness of fear because it uses it's given its power to its mind. As a whole, humanity has given away all of its power to the concepts that the minds present and forgotten what consciousness really is. Do you see what we're saying to you?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what you've done? You often give your power to your mind so completely that you think it pulled you out from your fear?
Oh yeah.
Did it? Was it your mind that got you away from being afraid? Or was it your mind that simply distracted you into a different fear?
Probably distracts me into a different fear. A fear of not expanding.
Right. But the choice to choose freely, then, dear friend, the mind would just simply not be so involved. It would truly then become the tool that it was intended to be when you first created the mind. How many people incarnate every moment on the planet Earth?
Is it millions?
Of course. Hundreds of millions every moment
Wow.
incarnate on the planet. And each one of those comes in and creates a mind. And each one of those uses the mind to exist because they're being trained by those that surround them that the mind is the most important thing that they can have. When you take an infant, what you do is you train it to use its mind. Learn to talk, learn to walk, learn to communicate, learn to speak, learn to use the bottle, learn to use the nipple, learn to be toilet trained, learn to go to school. What do you think school is all about?
Training the mind.
Training the mind. What do you think your whole society is all about? Training the mind. Why do you think that you have societies that are advanced, such as North American society, and societies that are less advanced, such as the African nation societies? Because the minds have not been trained the same way. Why do you think there's discrimination? Because individuals think that one can use the mind better than the other. It's all based on mind, which of course is all based on the consciousness of fear, isn't it?
Does that mean that those cultures that have not trained their minds like others have less fear?
Yes.
Like the African nations would have less fear?
They don't live in the same element of fear. They still have the consciousness of fear. Make no mistakes about that. They use the mind. They just have used it differently than you have. It's not that they've trained it less. They've used it differently.
Oh, I see.
But if you took a culture that, in effect, didn't live out of the mind, didn't use the mind as a way of existence, then yes, you would perceive a consciousness of free choice.
But would it be a consciousness of free choice?
Yes. You see, in free choice you still have the mind. You just don't give the mind all that power. Remember how we've been trying to get you to quit giving power to your mind?
Yes.
Hasn't worked yet so far, has it?
No.
What will happen when you finally just give yourself freedom to choose? Do you think your mind will be non-existence?
I guess it would just work in the background.
It would work as a tool, which is what it was intended to work as.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the background, but as a tool.
So it could still be in the forefront?
Of course, but it wouldn't be the one choosing, would it?
Mm-hmm. So there are nations or communities that, because they haven't trained the mind in a certain way, simply choose freely?
No. Not on the planet. Not in humanity, there isn't.
What about in the animal kingdom?
Well, now you're talking something different, aren't you? No, we're not talking humanity then, are you?
No, we're not. But there's not the same power given to the mind. Yet there is a mind.
There is. And there is the same power given to the mind in most cases. Though there are a few cases of, there's, term it, less of an empowerment of the mind. But there's still very much an empowerment of mind. Make no mistakes about that. Your animals are no different than you are. They are, after all, extensions of you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what else could you ask? What about trees? What about trees? What about plants? You've gone through the animal kingdom, you've gone through humanity, the plant kingdom. There's a consciousness there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about them?
Now, there's something that doesn't operate from the consciousness of fear, does it?
Mm-mm.
No.
Do you see? Does that mean you have to reduce yourself in order to be into a consciousness of free choice? No. We're saying that consciousness of free choice is so totally different that it's difficult for your minds to understand, which of course is the quandary, isn't it? That's why it requires a real shift in consciousness. It's called a paradigm shift, because you can't keep thinking your way through this. You must choose, and choose freely. As you said yourself earlier, when you're thinking your way into it, you contract. When you just choose, everything expands. Isn't that the movement that you're looking to create for yourselves?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's a question. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What could you choose to do right now that you're not allowing yourself to choose to do out of fear, judgment, and guilt?
Well, I was wondering about the rocks and their consciousness.
That's a mind. Wondering. But yes, same idea. There's more free choice in the rocks. Though there is still some fear, we assure you.
Well, one thing I could choose to do is just to choose freely.
Well, there you go. So what opportunity is here right now for you to choose freely?
You could get up, walk around, go to the bathroom.
Could call us sleep. You could tell us to go take a hike.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, anything's allowed. You're
True.
right.
But what else? If everything's allowed, could you choose to explore yourselves?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, now there's a thought. Why did that not come to your minds? Because you operate out of a consciousness of fear.
And the fear of exploring ourselves.
Yes.
And so we could choose freely by just continuing to explore ourselves.
There you go.
Okay.
Interesting, wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're looking at movement, and by that we don't mean simply a bowel movement, but, movement on its own, would you say that your lives are in movement?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And if that were the case, and you agree with that, and you were to apply judgment to that movement, would you say that your lives are in expanding movement or contracting movement?
Contracting with judgment.
Be careful what you say. Look at your life.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a life that has contracting
You're
movement
right.
or expanding movement? We said
Yeah.
if you were to apply judgment to the concept of movement.
Well, it's still there.
Yes. You're trying to
So-
use your mind here to play with games with us.
Yeah.
Good for you. It's not going to work though. We're better at it than you are.
Well, I don't know. It's like
Look at it from this perspective.
I'd say it's got elements of both, actually.
Does it
Does it?
matter?
It does for the answer to this question.
I would think, like, for example, just the choice to be here to experience this is an expansive choice. But choices around how much I spend and this sort of thing is contractive.
Well, we apply judgment to everything.
Yes, you do.
And so even if you're expanding, you're going to have judgment.
Yes.
If you're contracting, you're going to have judgment.
Yes. Even expanding is a judgment and contracting is a
Yes.
judgment.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
Which is why we said it that way.
Okay.
And you got all caught up with that. Couldn't go any
A
further.
judgment on judgment. And expansion.
There you go. So, given that, would you say your life is in an expansive movement or a contractive movement? One said both. What do you say?
Expansive.
Anybody else?
For me, I see a lot of contraction and some elements of expansion.
Anybody else?
I would say both.
Do you want to rephrase your statement now?
Me?
Yes.
I say overall direction is expansion.
Ah,
Overall direction.
with elements of contraction.
In the, yes, day to day, yeah, there's
Yes.
both.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Good for you. Is it necessary to deny the reality
No, I'm,
in order to shift your consciousness?
no, it's not necessary.
So then, in order to shift consciousness, what must you do?
Choose.
Yes, and accept your reality.
Hmm.
How can you choose anything if you're not willing to accept what is?
No, that's true.
Because you can say to yourself you're choosing, but then you're just choosing based on an illusion, so you're pretend choosing of an illusion that really is a pretend anyway, so you're pretending to pretend that you're choosing to pretend because they're pretending is choosing to pretend. Figure that one out.
Well, I feel like I acknowledge that I have contractive moments in my life,
Good.
but the overall direction,
Is
I guess I'm
expansive.
not really willing to let go of that, that I really believe the overall direction is expansive.
And we agree.
Yeah.
But the key is to get to the point of choosing freely, to live in a consciousness of free choice.
Hmm.
We're encouraging you to realize that unless you quit denying the reality of yourself presently,
Hmm.
you will not be choosing a consciousness of free choice. In fact, you'll be choosing out of a consciousness of fear. In other words, you fear you fear your contraction, and you're denying it.
Yes, I know there's certain things I'm afraid to look at clearly, to really acknowledge what is there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that difference is what we're talking about. There can be no shift in humanity's consciousness if it keeps denying that it's choosing out of fear.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
And, you know, all the people that are trying to shift humanity's consciousness to a consciousness of love, what do they tell you?
They're not afraid.
No, they're not. They're telling you they're not afraid. They're telling you that there's no fear involved here, that to deny your fear, to use affirmations to overcome your fears, to reprogram yourselves away from your fears. Use all kinds of psychologies and techniques and methodologies to basically deny your fears.
Because if anyone mentions that they're afraid, it's like, oh, well, you must not be as advanced. or
Yes, and you're
something.
not part of the group.
No.
It's like
That's going to advance. That's going to enlighten themselves, so that by 2012 you'll just poof, expand, blow up, disappear.
Is that a nuclear explosion?
No, but that's the concept that 2012 is bringing, isn't it? The Mayan calendar ends. The world will end. The consciousness will move. Certain individuals will move from third dimensional reality to fourth. What a load of crock. Because in effect, dear friends, what you're doing is you're using fear, a consciousness of fear, in a pretend expansion, and it's not going to be real. You see?
Mhm.
So, as long as humanity keeps insisting through its leaders, through those who would try to change humanity's consciousness, that no, fear isn't real, no, we're not afraid, no, we're not afraid, we're going to do this no matter what, we're not afraid, then, dear friends, you live in a consciousness of fear. Which is why, as we said, those who would try to move humanity to a consciousness of love can't. They will not succeed because they keep pushing against the consciousness of fear, denying it. So in effect, they're still operating from it. Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
if you weren't operating from that, you would, instead of saying we're not afraid, you would admit you're afraid.
Yes.
But you wouldn't say, I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it, because that's still pushing.
Exactly. But you see, you could say, let's just say, it would be difficult for you to say, I'm afraid, but I'm going to love myself in spite of my fear. That would be the only way you could do it, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because the concept is that in love, there is no room for fear.
Okay.
True?
Yes.
And that's really what everyone's trying to teach you, isn't it? That in love, in the consciousness of love, there is no room for fear.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what they're trying to teach you?
Yeah, if you're doing it right.
What does Lazarus teach you? What does Oren teach you? What does the Palladians teach you? What does Ramtha teach you? What does everybody else teach you?
Is that because that's from their experience, that when in their current state they feel, but they aren't being, that's not honest then, because they must feel some fear too.
The consciousness of fear.
Yeah, it's kind of like the religious concept of good and evil.
Exactly.
You know? Oh, I'm good, therefore I'm not evil. I'm constantly pushing against it.
Yes.
But it makes me wonder why they teach that. Why do they teach that then?
We're asking you
Mm-hmm.
to reflect here for a moment.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Some of you have experiences with other channelers. Some of you have experience with other material. Some of you have experiences with religion. Some of you have experience with your world leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Do they not teach you, whoever's trying to teach you to move into love, are they not teaching you that to get to love you must not have fear?
Right.
Oh, it's very exclusive.
Isn't that what they're teaching you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And if they're teaching you that, you ever wonder why you never succeed?
Right.
Completely in denial. All
Well,
the way.
you succeed for like a couple days.
Days? Not even days. Seconds. The euphoria lasts for days,
Uh-huh.
but seconds.
Okay. And because you can't, because you're denying the fear, is
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So as long as you're in denial of the fear, as long as all of these leaders, all of these teachers, all of these individuals that are trying to shift the world consciousness keep telling you that there is no room for fear in love, then do you really think that humanity's consciousness will change?
No.
No, you're still giving that fear.
And those that are telling you that in love, that love encompasses fear, they have a hard time explaining that to you, don't they? Because they're never the examples, are they?
Mm.
Mm.
Right. You never see fear in them. Or they never.
They never allow you to see it.
Right.
But they probably will fight against it
Of course they do.
when we're not seeing, looking.
So now, what if you just went to a consciously free choice? Where everything is allowed?